You love them. That part isn't in question. But there's something that happens when you're around them, even the people you love most, that doesn't happen when you're alone. A low-level effort, a background hum of performance, a subtle sense that you are managing something, your words, your reactions, your energy, in a way you simply don't have to when nobody's watching. And when you finally get time alone, there's something that arrives that isn't quite relief but is close to it. A settling, a return to something. And then almost immediately, the guilt for feeling it. Because you love these people, so why does being with them feel like work in a way that being alone doesn't? The answer isn't that you don't love them enough. It's something much more specific. And understanding it changes not just how you see yourself, but how you show up in every relationship you care about. This isn't about introversion exactly, though it overlaps with it. Plenty of introverts feel deeply comfortable with the people they love, and plenty of extroverts experience this too. That specific exhaustion that comes not from crowds of strangers, but from the people closest to them, the ones who should feel easiest. What makes solitude feel more comfortable than intimacy, even with people you genuinely love, has to do with something that happens in the nervous system when we get close to people who matter to us. Strangers carry low stakes. Acquaintances are manageable, but the people we love, they have the ability to actually hurt us. And that capacity, that real vulnerability, activates something very old and very specific in people who learned early that closeness comes with a cost. What that cost was and how it's still being paid decades later, that's what this video is about. Attachment researcher Mario Mikulincer spent years studying what happens in the nervous system when people who have developed avoidant attachment patterns get close to others. What he found was striking in its specificity. People with avoidant attachment don't experience closeness as neutral. They experience it as a mild but consistent threat signal. Not dramatic, not conscious, just a low-level activation that says, this proximity is risky. Your system is now on mild alert. And the most reliable way to reduce that activation is distance. For people with this pattern, solitude isn't just rest. It's deactivation. It's the nervous system finally coming off its background vigilance, the vigilance that intimacy triggers, and returning to a baseline that feels like home. Which is why being alone can feel more peaceful than being with the people you love most. It isn't about loving them less. It's about what your nervous system learned to associate with closeness. And what did it learn? Almost always, something in early experience. Psychologist Phillip Shaver, who collaborated extensively with Mikulincer, found that avoidant attachment patterns develop most consistently in environments where emotional closeness was followed, not always, not dramatically, but often enough by disappointment, withdrawal, or the demand for emotional self-sufficiency. The parent who was warm but unpredictable. The caregiver who needed the child to need less. The environment where showing vulnerability produced not comfort, but discomfort in the adult whose own needs were activated by the child's. The child's nervous system drew the conclusion that closeness means risk, that the people who matter most are also the people most capable of withdrawal. And so it developed a strategy: maintain enough distance to be safe, be present but not fully, available but not open, close enough to love, far enough to survive it if it goes wrong. And that strategy, so well designed for one environment, gets carried into every intimate relationship that follows, including the ones with people who would never hurt them. Here is the part worth sitting with honestly. When someone consistently feels more comfortable alone than with the people they love, and acts on that comfort by creating distance, by withdrawing after closeness, by being present but somehow unreachable, the people who love them feel it, not as a theory, as a lived experience of something being slightly withheld, a warmth that has a ceiling, a connection that gets close and then quietly retreats. Partners describe it as loving someone who is always slightly elsewhere. Friends describe the odd experience of a person who is generous and caring in 100 practical ways, but somehow difficult to actually reach. The avoidant person often genuinely doesn't see it. From the inside, they are present. They are trying. They are showing up. What they can't feel is the millimeter of glass between them and full contact, because that millimeter has been there so long it no longer registers as glass. It just feels like the normal distance between people. And the cruelest dynamic this creates is that the closer someone tries to get, the more warmly they pursue, the more the avoidant nervous system activates. The pursuit feels like pressure. The love feels like demand, and the retreat that follows, the sudden need for space, the pulling back just as things get real, leaves the pursuing person feeling rejected in a way they can't fully explain because the retreating person genuinely does love them. The wiring just can't hold the proximity yet. Here is what's true about people who feel more comfortable alone that almost never gets said. The self they return to in solitude, that settled, clear, resourced version of themselves, is not a version that requires isolation to exist. It feels that way. But what solitude is actually providing isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of threat, the absence of the vigilance that intimacy triggers. And that means the goal isn't to need people less, it's to make closeness feel less threatening, which is a very different project. Mikulincer's later research on what he called security priming found something remarkable. When people with avoidant attachment were briefly exposed, even unconsciously, to experiences of safe, non-demanding connection, their nervous system showed measurable shifts towards openness. Not dramatic shifts, small ones. The nervous system that learned closeness is risky can learn, through repeated experience, that it isn't always, that some people are safe to be known by, that full presence doesn't always end in withdrawal. The comfort you feel alone is real. It is not a character flaw. It is the nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do to keep you safe. But safe and alive are not the same thing. And the life that's available on the other side of learned safety, the one where you can be fully present with someone who loves you, without the glass, without the managed distance, that life is also available to you. It just requires a nervous system that's been shown, slowly and repeatedly, that the old rules no longer apply. The people who love you are not the environment that taught you to keep your distance, and somewhere underneath all the strategy, your nervous system already suspects that. It just needs enough evidence to believe it. If today's video names something you felt but never quite put into words, the comfort of solitude that coexists with genuine love, the guilt that follows, the managed distance you didn't fully know you were creating, understanding where the pattern came from is a real beginning. But the nervous system that learns closeness is risky doesn't reorganize through insight alone. What shifts it is structure. Small, repeated, concrete experiences of staying present a little longer than the activation says to leave. Not forcing intimacy, just building evidence, one day at a time, that the old conclusion no longer has to be the only one. And if this video finally explains something you've wondered about yourself for years, subscribe. We do this every week.